and also say that this is the joint Province 4 and Province 5 Creation Care Network meeting, May 3rd, 2001. I'm Catherine Duffy from Province 5, Diocese of Southern Ohio, co-hosting with Jerry Capel, Province 4, Diocese of Louisville.
Kentucky.
I always want to say Kentucky. Which one is it? Kentucky?
It is Kentucky, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Is Lexington gets the
They get their own, yeah.
Yeah.
They get what's left over.
Yeah. No, Lexington's just always considered themselves superior to Louisville, and therefore, you know, they're happy with that.
Well, welcome everybody. We are so glad you're here. We thought we would start again this month with some introductions, although you hear us say this every month, but the folks that are coming consistently, you know, every month, we like to skip over those people and just go to the new folks who are here with us. But I wonder if everybody wouldn't mind, and I'm going to do it myself, taking a moment, if you know how, to rename yourself, and then just after your name, either just name your diocese or the city where you are, so people have just a sense of where your feet are on the ground this morning. So I put Diocese of Southern Ohio, which is, I live in Columbus.
And if you don't know, wiggle your mouse, 3 dots in the corner if you're on a browser, but I don't know if you're on a smaller device.
Yeah, if you don't know, that's all right. We'll just
You right click.
point and laugh at you.
Right click works.
Right click works and pulls up a menu. Rename.
Jill, we're thrilled to have some Missouri representation today. That's great.
Thank you. I'm like overdosing. I went to Province 5 ECW over the weekend and a pre-conference ECW Province 5 thing last Wednesday. So yeah, and then of course church normal yesterday. So
you're all in. You're
lots
all in for the institution. That's great. We're really glad to have you. So let's begin with whoever. I know, Jill, we were just chatting, but for folks who are new, first call, second call, you know, relatively new to this crew, introduce yourselves, a little bit about you, where you're from, what led you here today, and what are you hoping to get out of our group? That's kind of how we all begin. And we're very casual, so just if you are identifying as new this morning, no matter how many times you've been here, please just feel free to jump in.
Well, I'll jump in. You know, I'm Chatty Cathy, and you'll have to, you know, do like this for me. But I really, I guess I've been involved in creation care and, you know, head of the green team at St. Matthew's Episcopal, and involved in, now that I've retired, I'm a media producer, was for about 50 years, but, you know, carrying coffee and stuff like that. So I'm one of my I don't know where to begin to end, but working with Jerry, of course, and really concerned, and I have marched for climate, been involved in the 350 movement, 350 Louisville, and anti-TARP sands, and arrested in front of the White House. And, you know, I'm a child of the 60s, and if it has peace or justice in the name, and now I would say, so creation care, I'm all in. And so I'm excited about collaboration. I absolutely believe none of this happens alone. Isn't that what creation's all about? Interconnected, you know, tug on all the, you know, any web string shakes the whole web.
If anything cool in Louisville's happening, you just look around and you see Rhodey in some corner of it somewhere.
well, I'll add on to mine. I'm definitely new here. I'm new to creation care. I think our new Bishop Dion just created a creation care committee across the Diocese of Missouri. And we met for the first time in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And then we met with the bishop to kind of see what his vision was. And so I'm, as I can, trying to take in the content on the Province 5 one and the Diocese of Missouri one and various congregations or parishes. Anyway, there's a lot of content to kind of digest. So I'm just sitting in here today to find out what this body does. Oh, and I'm from Rolla, Missouri, Christ Episcopal Church. Rolla is the home of Missouri S&T, the Science and Technology University in Missouri, and we grant 19 engineering degrees. So if you're a technical background, you may have heard of us. I'll stop with that for today.
Is that our newbies pretty much? I guess.
Anyone else? And I see, thank you guys, you're dropping your information in the chat as well. That just, yeah, it helps us know where you all are. Normally, and we will get to this again, sometimes we spend the entire meeting in the networking space where people are sharing where they are. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we take more time sharing resources and talking about ministries or topics. And so it really just depends on the month. Most of the time we don't put the newbies on the spot. So Jill and Rhodey, we appreciate your willingness this morning to introduce yourselves. By way of an agenda, Jerry and I thought that we would begin from a place of ministry resource sharing and reflection, I think, to give people an opportunity to just report back and share if anybody did anything ministry related or special for Earth Day, or any specific creation-based ministry that you've had success with in your parish or in your diocese that you think is worth sharing. And looking around this group, I know there are. We developed a couple of kind of guiding points that I'm just going to hit enter and drop into the chat. And we would just ask, I think, you guys, if you feel led, again, if you have an example, just to share it with the group. And I'll go first, and I'll give you a for instance of kind of what we were hoping for. And the purpose of this sharing, one, is to, again, help us get to know one another. Two, so people know that they're not the only ones out there doing this work. And three, hopefully inspire some ideas, for the future for other areas, other parishes or ministry groups to replicate. So let me give you an idea of kind of what we're thinking of. So last week on April 25th, we hosted at my parish a speaker, a man named Dr. Adam Clark, who was he's a professor at Xavier University in Cincinnati, and he offered a perspective of creation ministry that I think was new and different, at least for our parish. It was a diocesan, really church-wide event, and we had advertised it across the province. It was called Christianity as an Earth-Honoring Faith, a call to public discipleship. And the inspiration for the ministry was really the fact that I think in creation work, people can get really pulled into action because the problem feels so big. And so we're wanting to act and wanting to do something that feels like we're kind of chipping away at this massive iceberg. But as Christians, all of our work needs to be rooted in the gospel. And so the inspiration was to ask him to draw us back into that, into relationship with God as our starting point. Some of the challenges, well, for those of you guys who were there, we had some significant technical challenges, which, as somebody who's a little bit of a perfectionist, like that kind of stuff, it's hard for me. Also, I was challenged by my own need to sort of monitor how many people were signing up. Was that enough people, and so on. I stopped checking eventually because I really wanted to live in a space where it didn't matter, that the Holy Spirit was going to call who the Holy Spirit was going to call. And the joyful surprise really was that I got feedback from people in our parish that really, really surprised me, that felt moved by what he said. We don't often have people of color at our parish at all, let alone in the pulpit, let alone in positions of leadership. And I think that he spoke in ways that probably challenged people in good ways. So that was just very, I think it was received very positively. I have only heard really positive feedback and people following up, people following up, saying that they would like more of this stuff. And I mean, I think really what I learned is that we can do more of this, and that people are hungry for this type of thing, that I think rooting in their faith and giving these problems to God and being faith forward actually makes the problem seem a little bit more manageable. So that's it. And I guess I would encourage people to do more of this stuff. We'll get to later in the call, like we'll get to sharing some upcoming events and ways to engage theologically and spiritually with creation that we know are coming down the pike. But it was just such a good reminder that we need to do this kind of work, that we need to be transformed in order to take on the work of creation. So that's me, and that's what we did last weekend. So I'll stop and put the piece back in the center.
Well, last weekend, we did a cleanup around our church. We have an area of a hill that has kind of gotten wild, and a lot of garbage and stuff collects in there. So those are all cleaned up and picked up, and preparation for beginning our hay bale gardens, which we should be planting in the next couple weeks. So the cleanup was the first step on that. And so now with that, we'll do a big service as we look at creation and so on as we plant the garden. So, and that'll be the first step in our summer-long celebration of food and creation.
What else are you doing over this summer?
Well, as you know, it's the garden will put a big sign up. It's take and eat, share garden. So everything we plant can be eaten without being cooked, so that the homeless in the area or those in need can come and just, if it's ripe, they can pick it and eat it. And so as different celebration times, as certain crops come up, we will host a day of celebration with other churches where other churches can bring and share, people can share excess out of their garden. And we'll make a big food, and we'll invite all of the neighbors, which is at a fairly low income area of town, invite the neighbors to come and have a meal with us, and just to share and get to know each other and so on. So it's kind of an outreach ministry as we're looking at getting to know our neighbors and helping take care of them. So
nice.
So Rhodey, did St. Matt's do anything for Earth Day? You're muted there. Go ahead. Not really?
Not really, no.
It's a big congregation.
maybe-
St. Matthew's is just context, sorry. Which we both have been. I've been at St. Matt's on staff in the past. Big congregation, progressive. That's the place that John Shelby Smong might show up, or any of the cutting edge theologians. Anyway, but they have struggled on this front, I think. So.
Absolutely. I had lunch 2 days ago with the co-conspirator that started the creation team, the green team at St. Matthew's, who now lives on the West Coast, and she was just visiting. And I must confess, when she left, I collapsed. I mean, we have recycling and stuff like that. But we don't really, we're not trained. We don't have trained people to go check through and say, oh, here's a coffee cup. Maybe we should, all that. I mean, without being a jerk about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm really, we do have this incredible possibility. We have this thing called Dimensions of Faith, and we call in nationally known speakers, and Marcus Borg and Bishop Spong and Dominic Crossan. I mean, anyway, wonderful, wonderful people. And I must confess that one of the people I'd be interested in bringing maybe next year is John Philip Newell, who is a wonderful Celtic Christian, was one of the wardens at Iona and things like that. And it's not Trinitarian, but it absolutely is about the spiritual connection of God and nature.
Yeah.
I've got a few things. I was sitting here making a list. I live in Mobile, Alabama, and in the Diocese of the Central Gulf Coast. And I started making a list of the things that we'd done earth-centered. So I was gonna kind of list off that. First of all, I participated kind of marginally in the ecumenical advocacy days, and in listening to the session with the Episcopalians, I learned that the dioceses in Massachusetts had issued a declaration of climate emergency, which I thought was a very powerful statement to come out of all the bishops of the diocese. So I sent a letter to my bishop and suggested that he look at doing that, since we're right on the Gulf Coast and we face all of those threats pretty directly. And it's been pretty much radio silence since then. So I'm not sure where to go with that next. But for our own church, we did an Earth Day service, and we used the New Zealand Book of Common Prayer has some really great Eucharistic prayers that focus on the environment. And then the priest at the church asked me to do the sermon, which was frightening as heck, but I did it. And then we did a garden blessing, and we're converting our kind of unused garden into one that there's a school for autistic children that operates out of our parish house, and they're going to start working the garden. So it's kind of a good symbiotic relationship for that garden. And then let's see, I gave a talk to a Presbyterian church the week before that. I've developed a PowerPoint that I call a faith-based response to climate change. And Catherine, I listened to your fella, Dr. Clark. That was him, right? Dr. Clark? Yeah, I listened to him, and he had some real good suggestions that, I kind of can work in. He did it after I did the presentation, but I'll work it into. So I highly recommend that if you've got that recorded. Have you put it in the chat, the recording of his
I
talk?
did. Yeah, I dropped it in the chat. It actually, if you click the link, you'll see me. But if you just wait until I say the prayer, he comes on right after me. So
Yeah, he was great.
To see me.
He was great.
I was so glad to see you there. It was really cool. Glad you came.
Yeah, it was. And I think that's it. Our Gulf Coast Creation Care group tried showing Kiss the Ground, the movie Kiss the Ground, at a couple of places, and it was a complete and total flop. So just,
Oh.
yeah. Well,
Layla,
yeah.
why?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we tried our best to publicize. Well, one I do know, the Mobile Public Library agreed to show it as an outdoor theater, and when they were trying to put their screen up, the winds were too high and it kept collapsing the screen. But the point is, one car showed up. So it's not like it was going to be a blowout event anyway. And then we showed it at the local downtown theater as a free show on Earth Day. And 5 of us were there, and we're all members of Gulf Coast Creation Care. So I don't know. It was worth a try. That was the Interfaith Power and Light thing.
Fabulous movie.
No kidding. Yeah.
How big is the hurricane going to have to be to get Alabama to?
Right. I know. I know they're still recovering from several hurricanes down further south, southern part of the diocese. I don't understand.
You just have to keep trying. You just have to keep trying.
Well, just to give us context, so the St. Matthews, there's a little backstory there. That prophet of greenery that Rhodey was referring to, who is an old friend. She was there when I was there and stuff, and then she moved to California. But she is a bit of a firebrand and energy source. She's one of those relentless. That she also has a green finger that she could shake at you. And so it's that tension in churches, right? So
Yeah.
you build that tension up, and then you've got, in some ways, you've got as much wall as you do door. And so anyway, it's that tension there that we have to sort out as we try to do this work. So anyways. So what else? Anyone else got Rhodey?
Well, I was thinking that hectoring and shaming, calling people out rather than calling people in.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very useful for me kind of thing. I mean, I need the prodding, and I need the cattle prod or someone to rattle my cage or my chain a little bit. And so I needed Louise in many ways to be very active. And Kentucky, Indiana Power and Light we've seen, I think, 6 films and had discussion afterwards, all on Zoom. And that's been quite, it's very rich. And Kiss the Earth was one of them, and Water Warriors. I loved, and I should share with you some of these, and they're great. And I love it when, a broad coalition there's some, the Water Warriors was about holding back the fracking in New Brunswick, I think. Well, of course, there's a moratorium, and, Rust never sleeps. And, the big corporations, they're just biding their time, until they can get, anyway, I'm afraid, it's a holding, but it still was a victory. It's a holding movement, but it's a victory. And I think as things become clearer and clearer and clearer, and the younger people come forward with their passions, I think that even the politicians will read the writing on the wall and hopefully start making, planning for the 7th generation.
I want to respond to both of you, actually. I'm doing some work, and I'll be talking about that a little later. But when our church was founded in the 1800s, I'm in Trinity Point, Mineral Point, Wisconsin. At the first vestry meeting, the very first vestry meeting of the church, here in quotes, because I've been going back over the old vestry minutes, it says, "The people of this parish are strenuously opposed to all modern innovations in the church." So that should tell you where my parish comes from, but I think it also tells you where your parish comes from, because those tensions exist. They aren't new. They have been there since the Episcopal Church has been going along within the United States. That to me was, that was a very calming statement after I finished laughing. It was a very calming statement. It's like, oh, this tension has always been here. The tension between innovation, between innovation in thinking, innovation in product, and the tension between conservation and exploitation. I just put that out there for you.
Yep. Yeah, and the argument that can be made that a movie as good as Kiss the Ground is still a movie that could be just as good without the church at all.
Right.
Don't lead us there.
Right.
And so it's really not about the essence and the charism of what the churches are, and we got to deal with that too. We need to make sure we're letting the church be the church and not asking it to go be something else. All right, so okay, so with that, I think we're gonna move to other things so we get our time, get our agenda.
Can I throw
Yes.
something quickly in? We don't have any organized activities yet that I was aware of, but it turned out that for Earth Day was coming up like within a week of when we first met. And so I just shared that I was going to go to a local Earth Day thing here in Rolla, in our next door town, at an Earth Day present. Like it was supposed to be an outdoor thing and it rained. So we had 5 tables with native plants and other sorts of organizations. But I represented with some other people, the Citizens Climate Lobby, if you're familiar with that. And we do have a local chapter of that in Rolla. And I'm also new to that. So but anyway, so I mentioned it, and I think that and the Clean Streams organization, that the leader of both of those is the same person locally. And I mentioned those, and they were at least discussed when Kevin led our meeting online. So I was like, well, doesn't anybody else have organizations? But I'm like, I'm brand new here. I'm just telling you this example. But in any case, yeah, I really like this group. I like their nonpartisan approach and just trying to be fact-based. Anyway, move on in your agenda, but I wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, thank you. Good to have.
I sense Jerry's waiting for me to start talking.
I am.
One thing that is on our agenda that we want to make sure that we do every month, but especially this month, because as we get into the warmer weather, there seems to be more and more going on, is make you guys aware of the big events. This is probably not a comprehensive list, but there are a lot of things going on around the church that will that will kind of get at some of that theological and spiritual, reflection and development that we were talking about. So the first one I want to mention, and Jerry, I may give you the floor to talk about the Siri webinar and the.
Yeah, give me permission to share for a second, then.
Oh, share screen, yeah.
Let's been blocked.
Hopefully that worked. No, everybody can share, but that's okay. I trust you guys.
Okay, did that not work?
Yeah, that works, Jerry. We can see it.
Good. Okay. Right. So every month for the fall season, spring season, and winter, we have the Center for Religion and Environment at the University of the South has been hosting a monthly webinar. This is the last of the series that you see before you. Stories of Belief, how storytellers engage the wilderness. On the 20th of this month at 7 p.m. Central. Don't mess that up. That has messed some people up in the past. They log in 7 p.m. Eastern time, and then we're not there. So this is the CRE.org events page. So you can there's a registration button down here. So if you want to register for that, it's here on this website. So yeah, in fact, what I can do is I'll just copy this and drop it in the chat. And so just a heads up on that. There's been 40, 50-ish people showing up to these. There's 60 some registered today even, and we're early in May. So registrations will be pretty good on these, and it's free. So, all right, I will stop sharing with that. You're muted.
The CCC as well.
Oh, a new class? Yes. So the other thing the center does, not the other thing, another big thing the center does is holds a annual class on contemplation and care for creation, which is centered around nature contemplation, plus doing a lot of theology and some economics about living rightly on earth and faithfully on earth, and learning to pray with nature in contemplation. It's a 12-month course, which has an intensive at the first and an intensive at the last, and in between is twice a month Zoom meetings where the group gathers. So the next one starts in June. Could still register for it. You would go to that same website and not upcoming events, but instead you would choose, I believe, what we do, right? Is that what we're
Yeah.
There's what you do, and there's programs listed, and there's ways to inquire. So if you want to ask a question about that, or you're interested, you can also talk to Catherine or I, or go to the Cree website and go from there. Okay, is that it?
From you, yes, thank you. That's it for now. A couple of others I wanted to share with you. The Center for Racial Healing, the Absalom Jones Institute, is having an event called Eco-Womanism and Environmental Justice. It's 3 sessions. It's a webinar that gives information resources that moves forward understanding of environmental issues from a womanist perspective. And that is 3 sessions, 2 weeks apart, actually, in May and June. I'm going to drop the Zoom link, but I'm actually also going to drop the because they're not linked together all that well, I'm going to drop in the Center for Racial Healing's actual website, because I think that is more helpful to see what they do. And you may be familiar with some of their work. They do a ton of work in the area of racial justice and racial healing. And this is one of their programs that's specifically focused on climate change. There's also upcoming the Seep Network, and I'm actually really embarrassed to say that I don't know what Seep stands for, but it's a huge organization of entities of the Episcopal Church, and they're specifically focused on leadership development. CEEP, they've been around a long time. They're offering also a webinar in May on, thank you, Heather, Consortium of Endowed Episcopal Parishes. I should know that. I feel like they've recently had a name change or something and taken away, like, anyway, now I just call them Seep and whatever. But they're having specifically in May a webinar based on climate technology and policy. I'm going to attend this one myself. It's May 12th. I'll drop the link in there too. They typically do, oh, not May 12th, I'm sorry, that was a lie. It's May 13th, Thursday. Their conferences or their webinars are usually just super high quality, really, really good. And so I know I'm attending this one as well. And then the last one I wanted to share, this is called the Way of Nature Summit. It's free. It's more the contemplative side. It's a 3-day event. Actually, it has a super lineup. I'm having trouble finding oh, here we go, the link to it. And I'm going to drop this one in too for you guys. Like I said, more on the contemplative side of things, but really very immersive. And the Way of Nature Institute really makes a point of offering this for free, so people don't have to feel like encountering these events is cost prohibitive and overwhelming. So if you look at this list and the link I just dropped into the chat, you'll see that it's very long. You can come in and out, but designed to be more of an immersive, I think, experiential, as experiential as Zoom can be, time. And again, 3 days, like I said. This is a group that frequently offers events as well. And so they'll be offering things late summer, well, all summer, really, late summer and into the fall. So a good list to be part of if you want to keep seeing what they're doing. So that's what's upcoming, I think, around the church in creation. And if there are others that we're not naming, of course, the list is always really long. I'll mention also, if you're familiar with the Good News Gardens movement of the Episcopal Church, it's a joint venture with evangelism and creation care. Designed, actually started last year in COVID, and really designed to encourage people to use their land for more planting, essentially. And if you're not planting anything now, just to plant a little, and if you're planting a little, to plant a little bit more. But it's really become a movement. Monthly webinars to talk about a variety of land and planting focused topics. So usually, they send out an email. Usually they've been meeting on Tuesdays, but I've noticed that that's jumped around a little bit. I will try to get the correct date for you guys. And thank you, Rody, for dropping that link in there for the Good News Gardens movement. Yeah, it's right on our Episcopal Church website. So let's stop with that. And Jerry, do you want to tee up Jane for the next?
Jane is easy to tee up. So there's a project that we are, several of us are in the middle of, and that is using as a guide in the framework Becoming Beloved Community, which has been developed and written for racial healing. We're adapting that for creation healing. And as part of that work, and we think is part of perhaps a group engagement and exercise to lay a foundation for the necessary truth telling that is part of this kind of healing, is to engage and encounter the natural history of the place you are. Just like it is necessary in racial healing to engage and encounter the racial history of the place you are. So Jane has been assigned to figure out how to lead a group of people to do that. And she has, I think, from the way she has responded to us, has found some fire in her bones about this, and she's coming across some pretty cool ways to actually discover what's the what, where she is, especially in Wisconsin, but perhaps also in other places. So we thought that she could share for a little bit what she has found, and maybe give us some hints about how we might follow through with that. How's that, Jane?
That sounds like a good start, a good way to start. Thank you very much. I don't have to do an introduction because Jerry's already done it. Yeah, my hand went up when we started talking about, in our little ad hoc group, talking about how we were going to tell the truth about our local environment. I'm not sure why my hand went up, except that I was completely interested in it. And I had to figure out a way to approach it because I really wasn't sure how I was going to approach it. I just knew that I wanted to do it. So I was interested hearing the conversation here about having wonderful guest speakers come into your parishes and speak about the environment and the relationship to the gospel. And that's so interesting to me. I took a completely opposite point of view in trying to develop the local history of Mineral Point, Wisconsin. I decided, it was an arbitrary decision, but I decided that the local voice was what needed to go into this local history. That, yep, there's an anecdote here and an anecdote here, and they may conflict a little bit, but that it would be my job to really pull the truth out of those anecdotes that I hear. So whatever I've done, I've gone towards the locale. So the first thing I did was to think, who are my friends? Who do I know? I don't want to go, for example, to Sierra Club. I don't want to go to a big organization. I want to go to the locale. So I asked a friend. Gail and I are in the garden club together. We are both master gardeners. We're friends. She also has a distinct advantage because she is an interpreter. She's not just the naturalist at the local state park. She is a nature interpreter. That's the new term for that job, which I liked very much. Okay, so the Governor Dodge State Park is within the 20-mile radius of Mineral Point, and it is 5,400 acres. And she's in charge of programming and leading tours and this and that and the other thing. So I said, what what information do you have? I volunteered to do this project. And she gave me two things immediately, one of which was a vegetation map from 1835, which is just prior to the big settlement, a big push for settlement in the Mineral Point area. And she also gave me a book about flowers, heritage flowers, and how flowers have been used over time to demonstrate whatever the choice is. But it's been very interesting to read that book, which is by Tovid Martin, Heritage Flowers, because it really talks about landscaping and how people landscape and what it means. I know most of you know this, but it's very interesting to me that using grass, for example, demonstrates that you have the money so that you don't have to grow vegetables in your own front yard. Oh, wait a second. I'm trying to get our church to put vegetables in our front yard so that people can go and pick the vegetables. I mean, it's just an interesting contrast. Greg talked about that as well with his program. So Gail is taking me on tours in Governor Dodge and to show me the old woods and the new woods and the differences between them, for example. So that is very interesting. The second person I went to is an acquaintance. He is the person who, as a dendrochronologist, dated the tamarack tree that's in the churchyard. We had no idea how old this tree was, but there's a group of people in our parish that are concerned about the tree because it prevents the grass from growing, right? The tree is so large now with its diameter of close to 3 feet that the grass is no longer growing under the tamarack. And these people are concerned because we should have grass, right? The Episcopal Church needs to demonstrate grass. Also, the needles drop down and destroy the grass plantings, and you can't plant any pretty flowers under the tree. So all of that was completely interesting, and the creation care people thought about what can we do to turn people's minds toward that tree, and the fact that the tree is old and the tree has been here. I mean, when was it planted? Tamaracks don't usually grow here. The tamarack is more native in the northern part of the state than it is down here in southwest Wisconsin near the Mississippi. So that was interesting. So we asked a dendrochronologist to come from UW, from the University of Wisconsin. This fellow lives in Mineral Point, so local again, and he was just charming with us. And he is a man who loves his science, and he talked to us a lot about. He was so happy to share everything about the tree. We now have a core, a radius of the tree with all of the different sizes of the wood, which he was happy to explain to us what had happened. It's not just about rainfall. There are other things going into that, but it's nice to have that little gift coming in. So I emailed Chris and I told him about this project that I was doing and said maybe he would like to help me, or maybe I could audit a course that he was teaching or something. Anyway, so he wrote back and he said, dendrochronology is really a hobby of mine. It's not what I do for a living. What I really am is a paleoecologist, and I can take you all the way back to the last glacial drift, and we can discuss all about the vegetation that happened. I thought, oh, hallelujah, I just got my thing all written. However, I also have been doing a lot of work on Aldo Leopold. He's not in this 20-mile radius of Mineral Point, but he is within the 50-mile radius, the shack and the area, the sand counties near Mineral Point. And he's one of my heroes. So I love to go to the lecture series that they have. And they sponsored this year a lecture series during Leopold Week, which is called Building an Ethic of Care. And I thought, oh, that's for me. So here's what I'm going to take out of Leopold I've got a lot more to say than what I'm going to say. But one of the things that Leopold did was to say that if in looking at the environment, it's always about how the land has been used. So it's always about the people that live in the environment and nature itself. You can't divorce it. You can't separate it and just study the vegetation and the trees and the plants. You must talk about how people have used the land and what that means. He also talked about the fact that an ethic of care is not static. It's something that grows with time. And I think what we have seen now with the popularity, actually, that's kind of maybe the wrong word choice, but the popularity of looking at the environment now, that ethic of care is growing. And we can only be really happy about that. There's a third point of view that's really important that fits into this, which is, and this is right out of social studies, fourth grade social studies, and it's important to remember that people move. Today we have refugees. Today we have land which is no longer able to be worked. We have people moving all over the world. But the fact is that we have always had people moving. We have had worldwide immigration. And I go back to the Sauk and the Fox and the Winnebagos who lived in this area. Those tribes have always moved. Some of them lived in one place in the summer and another place in the winter. So those three things, local voice, an ethic of care, and the fact that people move, have really guided my search. How am I doing on the time? Okay, I got a little bit of time. It was only after I did all of that. Oh, and I also went to a local mining museum because Mineral Point, we have huge lead deposits and huge zinc deposits. So I don't know, I truthfully don't know anything about lead and zinc, but I'm learning, and that's just will be one of my paths pretty soon. But I did find out that the father of one of my friends at Trinity has written a book, which is in the archives of the library, which is about the mining history of Mineral Point. So that was very nice to bring that forward, that this is part of our parish, the whole notion of minerals. Okay, one of the other things that has been documented is that Marquette and Joliet, when they, came down the Mississippi River, they traveled into this area and they arrived here in 1673 and found no inhabitants. No inhabitants. Well, we know that that's just not true. I mean, it's not factual, but they found no one here. So it was, again, for the white settlers, this is the beginning of the discounting of the native peoples that have lived here since 13,000 years ago. So, that's an interesting thing to remember. When I went into the local archives, notice that I talked to people first and then I went to the library. The local archives, I knew what I was going to find. I was going to find a great deal about the Cornish settlement in this territory, a great deal about the Cornish came for the lead, and then the Italians came for the zinc. I also knew I was going to find out a lot about War Chief Blackhawk, because he actually, particularly from 1804 to 1832, when he was imprisoned with his group of braves, spent a lot of time trying to get rid of the Anglo settlers that were coming into this area. So that's a huge, anyway. One of the things that happened in 1804, remembering that Jefferson the surveyor was our president, he wanted the land west of the Appalachians surveyed. So in 1804, let me give you an example of how this went. In 1804, there was a situation where a Sauk brave had been imprisoned in St. Louis because he had killed a white person. So in the Sauk tradition, you go to the place and you pay for the person that has been killed, and then the person who was in trouble for the murder or whatever you want to call it can be released. So 4 Sauk Braves, or under Black Hawk, the war chief, went to St. Louis to try to get this fellow released. And they didn't come back to the tribe, and they didn't come back to the tribe. Eventually, they came back, and they were dressed in really fine, good wool jackets, long jackets, and they were decorated with many medals. But they did not go into their village. They stayed outside the village. When eventually the native peoples went and tried to bring them into the village, they discovered that they had spent their entire time in St. Louis drunk, and that when they had paid, and I'll tell you what that payment was in just a minute, when they had paid, their friend, their one of the brave who was in prison, was released. And as he saw his friends, because he was scared, I don't know why, when he saw his friends, he began to run toward them, and the army soldiers fired and shot him in the back, and he was dead. But what the braves had given up in their stupor, in their drunken stupor, they had given up all the land south of the Wisconsin River, all of the Sauk and Fox lands, to the United States government. And I've got 3 minutes. And the United States government had 3 points of view. They wanted all the land for the purpose of cultivation, and all lands became public lands, which meant that people could purchase them eventually from the government. And the US government saved the mining tracts, or something that might have lead or zinc in it. Those were reserved for the US government. Those points of view are still in existence. All I have to do is think about the Arctic, and politicians wanting to lease out part of the Arctic or sell part of the Arctic for profit. It's the same rule that was in effect in 1842. I also want to say that one of our founding fathers, Moses Strong, was one of the speculators who, when these lands became public lands, purchased for his company 72,000 acres. And if you listen within Trinity Church to Moses Strong donated the land on which Trinity sits. And you get only the idea that he was a founding father of Trinity Church. There's no question about that. But trying to weigh all of this stuff, and we're going to be doing in our land acknowledgement, we're going to try to figure out in our land acknowledgement, for rogation, we are going to try to figure out how to put a land acknowledgement into that rogation service. Okay, it's
That's a great idea. So yeah, in the last minute, Jane.
Yeah.
So what we think what we want is maybe for you guys to get a feel for the import of doing this kind of background truth research about, especially for churches, if you're working with a church, about on what do they sit and how did they get there and what is their complicity and what was exploited and what was sold and who was killed in order for that to happen, and to make it local, right? Just
Yep.
It's not a theory and a generality. It's personal. And so Jane, in 1 minute, where would anyone else start to go down that road elsewhere? How would they do it?
Well, I think you start with your friends. You start locally because you want the anecdotes. So I feel like I'm lucky because the garden club, for example. I mean, garden club, going to a local state park, finding people at universities who are not going to dominate your quest, because it's going to be different. I mean, the university job, an academic job is different from you trying to get information. In Madison, we have a garden expo every spring. There are wonderful people who present there. Go there. And then, well, I was lucky the Leopold Foundation is here, but the local archives, and just start asking questions. Follow your own curiosity.
Very good. Thank you. So I don't know if it's occurred, but that kind of starting point is different than normal, right? We normally start with present conditions and we try to raise alarms.
Right.
That's not what this is. This is a whole different starting point. And it may be create a whole different in with some people who have finally honed their ability to disregard and to dismiss anything environmental. So anyway, just that thought to say, oh, well, don't start there. Go here with simply what was here before we were here.
So on Sundays, I cook for one of the older members of our parish. It's funny, me, I'm so old and I'm cooking for someone older. Anyway, I said to her last night, she's very interested in this research. And I said, so I found out that when Trinity was given its plot with Block 22, that the Cornish, the Anglos were given the west side of town. Oh yes, she said, and all the Italians, they worked in the zinc mines. They have to be on the other side of High Street. And I thought, that is completely interesting. I didn't know that. So she had that knowledge. Local inhabitants have the knowledge.
Thank you, Jane. That's so interesting. I live in a place that's being developed so quickly right now, and the people that live here are complaining because trees are being torn down and more houses are being put up. And it just makes me want to stop and say, what do you think was here before your house was here? You know, I think having that knowledge is such an important part of telling the truth.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
No, we all need to hop off. Yeah.
No, I have a job actually at 5 minutes after 11, and I'm going to go. And thank you for letting me do this.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I know an hour goes so quickly. We will see you all again, June something, first Monday in June. And the email goes out, so you guys will all be notified of that. We really appreciate your time today. Jill, it was great to see you. Good to be with you. Hope we'll see you again. Take care, everybody. Jerry, unless you had something else before I shut everybody off.
No, blessings on everyone. Blessed spring. Enjoy yourself. It's a good one.
Bye, all.